For 30 years, the name Eris Ven echoed through every corner of the galaxy like a shadow. Smugglers whispered it in fear, pirates cursed it, and bounty hunters respected it. To many, she was not a woman but a myth, a ghost that always struck fast and never missed. On Helios 4, the busiest bounty guild station in known space, people turned to look as she walked through the main hall. The place smelled of oil, metal, and smoke from the cantina nearby. Eris's boots made no sound on the steel floor, but every hunter present felt her presence. Her long black coat swayed behind her, and the silver scar across her left cheek caught the light. She walked straight to the guild counter where a nervous clerk greeted her. "Eris Ven," the clerk said, straightening up. "I have something big for you today." Eris raised an eyebrow. "Bigger than last month's syndicate job?" The clerk swallowed. "Bigger. The council itself approved this contract. The reward is, well, let me just show you." A holographic screen lit up showing a single profile, a man's face, sharp jawline, rough stubble, dark eyes that seemed to look right at her. Eris froze. It had been 10 years, but she knew that face as well as she knew her own reflection. Kyle Rinn. The clerk kept speaking, not noticing her stillness. Kyle Rinn, former soldier wanted for treason against the Alliance. They say he stole classified intel and sold it to separatists. The price on his head is the highest in the sector. Eris didn't answer right away. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of the counter, and her expression gave nothing away. But inside, her heart beat faster. Memories returned, nights spent laughing under alien skies, battles fought side by side, and the day Kale vanished without a word. She finally spoke. "Where was he last seen?" The clerk seemed relieved she was talking. "Outer Rim colonies. We don't have exact coordinates, but the trail is fresh. You'll be the first to go after him." Eris nodded once. "Send me the file." The clerk tapped a button, transferring the contract details to her wrist console. "Do you accept?" She didn't hesitate out loud. Accepted. But as she turned and walked away, her mind was far from calm. Back in her private hangar, Eris stood in front of her ship, the Shadowfang. Its black hull gleamed under the hangar lights. She had flown it through asteroid fields, through war zones, through the atmosphere of burning worlds. It was fast, deadly, and as much a part of her as her own heartbeat. She loaded her gear silently. Every movement was precise. Plasma pistol checked, pulse rifle charged, tracker drones online. Her hands moved out of habit, but her thoughts were far away. Kale Rinn. He was the one man she had let past her walls, the one man she trusted completely. And then one day he was gone. No note, no message, just gone. She had buried the pain under her work, under mission after mission, until she almost forgot what it felt like to feel anything at all. But now he was her target. She sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers hovering over the controls. For 30 years she had never failed a mission. The guild called her the perfect huntress. If she refused now, they would send someone else, someone who would kill him without hesitation. And she could not allow that. With a sharp breath, Eris powered up the ship. The engines hummed to life and the hangar bay doors slid open, revealing the endless black of space. "This isn't about the bounty," she said quietly to herself. "I just need to know why." The Shadowfang shot out of the hangar and into the void, its engines glowing like blue fire. Eris plotted her course toward the outer rim, following the data trail in the contract file. She leaned back in her seat, staring at the stars rushing past. For the first time in years, she felt something other than cold determination. It was something close to fear and something close to hope. If Kale was guilty, she would bring him in. That was her code. That was who she was, but if he wasn't, then Eris Ven, the deadliest huntress in the galaxy, might have to break her code. The Shadowfang dropped out of hyperspace near the outer rim. The stars stretched back to normal, and before Eris floated a broken colony world named Rathor 7. Once it had been a thriving mining settlement, but now it was scarred with craters and burnt-out cities. Eris stared at the surface as she guided the ship lower. Her console pinged. Kyle's last confirmed sighting was here only 3 days ago. She landed near the remains of a trading post. The air outside was thin but breathable, filled with the smell of ash. Her boots crunched on blackened ground as she walked among the ruins. The place was too quiet. Her visor scanner beeped, picking up a faint heat signature inside a collapsed building. Eris moved carefully, her plasma pistol drawn. Inside, she found a man hiding behind a broken wall. He was thin, dirty, and scared, but not armed. "Don't shoot," he cried, holding up his hands. Eris lowered her weapon slightly. "I'm looking for someone." "Kyle Rin. He was here." The man swallowed hard. "Yes, I saw him. He helped us." "Helped?" Eris frowned. The man nodded quickly. "Raiders came 2 nights ago. They tried to take what little food we had left. Kale fought them off. He gave us medicine, too. Said it was stolen from a corrupt depot, but he didn't care. He just wanted to save people." Eris felt her grip on the pistol tighten. "Where did he go?" "West toward the Starport ruins," the man said. "He was looking for a transport off-world." She tossed him a ration pack and left without another word. At the ruined Starport, Eris found signs of a recent firefight. Blaster scorch marks, empty power cells, and fresh tracks in the dust. She crouched, scanning them. They were Kale's size, but she wasn't alone. "Aris Ven," a voice said behind her. She stood, turning slowly, weapon ready. A tall figure stepped out from behind a half-burned shuttle. It was Jekmar, another bounty hunter and one of her oldest rivals. His scarred face split into a grin. "Didn't think I'd find you here," Jek said. "But I guess we're chasing the same prize." Eris didn't lower her weapon. "Walk away, Jek, this one's mine," he chuckled. "You always think that." But this time the bounty's too big to share. Without warning, he fired. Eris dived for cover as plasma bolts scorched the air. She rolled behind a crate, returned fire, and clipped his shoulder. Jek cursed and ducked back. Their fight tore through the ruined starport, blasts lighting up the dark corners. Finally, Eris outmaneuvered him, knocking his weapon aside and pinning him against a wall with her rifle at his chest. "Still want to finish this?" she asked coldly. Jek spat on the ground. "Fine, keep the job. But someone's going to get him, Eris. If not me, then the others. You know the guild won't stop until he's dead." Eris let him go, and he limped off into the dust. She returned to her ship, troubled. Kale helping people? That didn't match the image the guild had painted of a traitor. And if Jek was already here, others would soon follow. She had to move fast. Her tracker pinged again. A transport had left Rathor 7 only hours ago, headed toward Narrow Station, a trading hub at the edge of neutral space. Eris launched the Shadow Fang and set course. Narrow Station was loud, dirty, and full of suspicious eyes. The smell of fuel and sweat filled the air as merchants shouted over one another. Eris moved through the crowd like a ghost, scanning every face. Finally, she found a lead. A bartender in a small cantina recognized Kale from her holo. "He came through here," the bartender said, wiping a glass. "Didn't stay long. Met with a woman, gave her some kind of data chip. Looked like he was in a hurry." "What woman?" Eris asked. The bartender shrugged. "Some local smuggler. Name's Lyra." Eris tracked Lyra down in a cargo bay. The smuggler tried to run, but Eris cornered her. "Where is Kale Rin?" Eris demanded. Lyra hesitated, then pulled a small data chip from her pocket. "He gave me this. Said if anything happened to him, someone had to get it out. It's proof. Proof that the Guild and the Alliance Council are planning something bad. Real bad." Eris took the chip and stared at it, feeling a chill. Kale wasn't just running. He was fighting something bigger. For the first time, Eris began to doubt the contract she had accepted. She returned to her ship and loaded the data into her console. The encryption was strong, but she could see enough. Secret council orders, plans to destabilize several colonies, profit reports from arms manufacturers. Kale hadn't betrayed the galaxy. He was trying to save it. Eris sat in silence for a long time, staring at the stars outside her cockpit. For 30 years, she had always trusted the Guild's word. But now she wasn't sure who the real enemy was. One thing was certain. Kyle was in danger. And for the first time, Eris Ven didn't just want to catch her target. She wanted to protect him, Eris Ven's ship. The Shadow Fang sped through the void toward Theros 9, a jungle moon where Kale's trail ended. The data from Lyra had given Eris a new reason to find him. This was no longer just a hunt. When the ship descended into the thick atmosphere, Eris felt the hull shake as storms rumbled far below. Lightning flashed in the clouds, turning the sky a strange green. She guided the ship through the rough weather and landed near an abandoned research outpost. Her scanner showed a single life sign moving carefully through the jungle. Kyle Eris loaded her rifle, activated her stealth visor, and stepped into the wet heat of the jungle. The air was heavy, buzzing with insects, and the ground was soft under her boots. Vines hung low and strange glowing plants lit the shadows. She moved silently, following the tracker's signal until she saw him. Kyle Rinn stood near the remains of an old landing pad, checking a portable transmitter. His hair was longer than she remembered, his face rougher, but he was alive. Aris froze. For years she imagined this moment, what she would say if she ever saw him again. But now, with her rifle raised and her target right in front of her, she felt her heart twist. She stepped forward. "Kyle!" He spun, drawing a blaster and aiming it at her in the same instant. For a long moment they stared at each other. "Aris," Kale said finally, lowering his weapon slightly. "I thought you'd come." "You disappeared," Aris said. Her voice was calm but cold. 10 years. No message. And now the guild says you're a traitor. Kyle shook his head. "You know me better than that. I didn't betray anyone. I found out the truth. The council is planning a war, Aris. They want to wipe out half the frontier worlds to control the new jump gate routes. I had to run before they silenced me." Aris held up the data chip. "I saw what you left with Lyra, that's why I'm here. But you've got a bounty the size of a planet on your head. The guild won't stop until they kill you." Kale's jaw tightened. "Then I have to finish what I started. I'm meeting someone here tonight. A contact who can get this evidence to the entire network. If I can broadcast it, the whole galaxy will know." Aris lowered her rifle. For 30 years she had always completed her missions, but standing here she realized she could not bring him in. Before she could answer, her visor pinged with a warning, multiple heat signatures closing fast. Kyle saw it too. "They found us," Aris cursed under her breath. "Guild hunters." Blaster fire ripped through the trees as a team of armored hunters appeared from the shadows. Aris grabbed Kale and pulled him behind cover. "You're helping me now?" Kale asked, surprised. "I'm helping myself," Aris said, firing a burst that dropped the first hunter. "I'm not letting them take you before I get answers." The fight turned into chaos. Aris moved with deadly precision, her rifle picking off hunters one by one. Kale covered her with quick, clean shots, moving like the soldier he once was. Despite their skill, the hunters kept coming. One threw a grenade that blasted apart the cover they were hiding behind. The shockwave knocked Aris off her feet. Kale grabbed her arm and pulled her back just in time to avoid a follow-up shot. "Shadowfangs this way," she shouted. They ran through the jungle, branches whipping past, blaster bolts cutting through leaves. By the time they reached the landing site, Aris was breathing hard. She jumped into the cockpit while Kale covered the ramp. "Get in," she yelled. Kale dove inside and Aris hit the launch controls. The Shadowfang roared to life, lifting off just as more hunters broke through the trees. Plasma fire hit the hull, shaking the ship. But Aris pushed the engines to full power and blasted into the sky. Only when they reached orbit did she finally breathe. Kale sat in the co-pilot's seat, still gripping his blaster. "You just made yourself a traitor too, Aris. The guild won't forgive this." Aris looked at him, her scar catching the glow of the console lights. "Then we'd better make sure we have something worth being hunted for." Kale nodded. "We take the evidence to the independent broadcast hub on Velos Prime. If we get it out, we can stop the war before it starts." Aris stared at the stars ahead. For the first time in her career, she wasn't following a contract. She was following her heart, and that terrified her more than any mission she had ever taken. The Shadowfang sailed through the dark of space, engines glowing softly. Inside the cockpit, Aris sat at the controls while Kale worked on decrypting more files from the stolen data. The silence between them was heavy, filled only with the quiet hum of the ship. Aris had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. She was no longer a hunter chasing a target. She was a fugitive now, just like him. Finally, Kale broke the silence. "You didn't have to save me back there. You could have finished the job and walked away rich." Aris didn't look at him. "Maybe I didn't want to finish the job." Kale glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "You've changed." Aris let out a soft laugh without humor. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of being the guild's weapon." They stopped on Valar Station, a small trading hub, to refuel and gather supplies. It was risky. Aris knew bounty alerts were already out for both of them, but they had no choice. Inside the crowded market, Aris stayed alert, scanning every face. Kale bought spare parts while she kept watch. "Do you trust me?" Kale asked as they loaded supplies onto a hover cart. Aris hesitated. I trust that you believe what you're doing is right, but trust isn't something I give easily anymore. Kale nodded. Fair enough. I'll earn it. Before leaving, they met with an old ally of Kale's, Captain Drex, a freighter pilot with a reputation for smuggling goods through blockades. Drex was tall, loud, and had a laugh that filled the room. You two are in deep trouble, Drex said as they met in a quiet hangar. The guild has doubled the bounty. They're calling you both traitors. Eris crossed her arms. We need a safe route to Velos Prime. Can you get us there? Drex rubbed his chin. I can, but it won't be easy. Patrol ships are everywhere right now. You'll need to move fast and quiet, and you'll need allies, more than just me. Kale leaned forward. Can you put the word out? People still loyal to the frontier? People who want the truth out there? Drex grinned. I can do that, but you'd better survive long enough to make the broadcast. Hours later, back aboard the Shadowfang, Aris found herself staring out the viewport at the stars. Kale joined her, standing just behind her shoulder. You're thinking too much, he said softly. I always think too much, Aris replied. For 30 years I lived by one rule, never fail. And now I've broken it. I don't know what that makes me anymore. Kyle stepped closer, his voice steady. It makes you human. Aris turned to look at him. There was a time when she would have laughed at those words, but now they hit differently. She saw the same man she once knew. The man who fought for what was right even when it meant standing alone. You left without saying a word, she said quietly. Kale's expression softened. I had to. The moment I discovered what the council was planning, I became a target. If I had stayed, they would have used you to get to me. I thought leaving would keep you safe. Aris felt a strange ache in her chest. It didn't feel like safety. It felt like betrayal. Kyle looked down. I'm sorry, Aris. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the ship's alarm beeped. Enemy signatures detected. 3 guild hunter ships had found them. Aris snapped back into focus, rushing to the pilot's seat. Hold on, she warned as she pushed the ship into evasive maneuvers. Plasma bolts streaked past as the hunters gave chase. Kale manned the turret, firing back. You really made friends everywhere, didn't you? Less talking, more shooting, Aris said, rolling the ship to avoid enemy fire. The chase took them through an asteroid field, rocks spinning dangerously close. Aris flew with perfect precision, weaving between massive stones while Kale blasted one of the hunters to pieces. Finally, she found a narrow gap between 2 giant asteroids and boosted through it. The remaining hunters tried to follow, but one crashed against the rocks and the other turned back. They were safe. For now. Breathing hard, Aris set the ship back on course. Kyle slid into the co-pilot seat, sweat on his forehead but a grin on his face. You still fly like the best, he said. Aris allowed herself a small smile. Don't forget it. As the stars stretched into hyperspace, she realized something important. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting for something that mattered. And for the first time in years, she wasn't doing it alone. The twin suns of Velos. Prime blazed across the horizon as the Shadowfang dropped out of hyperspace. Aris Ven and Kale Rin stood at the ready, knowing this was the final step. If they failed, the Council and the Guild would carry out their plan, and countless colonies would suffer. Velos Prime's independent broadcast hub was heavily guarded, but Aris and Kale had allies waiting, freighters, smugglers, and frontier fighters who had risked everything to support the truth. The small fleet moved silently in the upper atmosphere, ready to back them up. Aris adjusted her rifle and checked her gear. For 30 years, she had lived by one rule: never fail a mission. This time, failure meant nothing. What mattered was doing what was right. She glanced at Kale, who returned a determined look. Together, they stepped out into the heat of the final battle. The Guild's headquarters loomed above the city, a massive steel tower filled with security systems and elite hunters. Aris led the way, moving with precision, her heart steady despite the tension. Kale followed, carrying the data chip that contained proof of the Council's corruption. The first wave of guards met them at the gates. Plasma bolts streaked through the air. Aris moved like a shadow, firing with perfect accuracy. Kale covered her side, taking down anyone who tried to flank them. Every shot, every dodge, every movement reminded them both why they had survived this long. They fought their way up through the tower, stairwell after stairwell, until they reached the control center. The Guildmaster waited there, a tall figure cloaked in black armor. their presence commanding and terrifying. "Eris Ven," the guildmaster said, voice cold and sharp. 30 years undefeated. "And now you betray us for this man?" Eris held her rifle steady. "He's not the enemy. You are." Kale stepped forward. "It's over. The truth will be broadcast to the galaxy." The guildmaster raised their weapon and the duel began. Eris moved with unmatched skill, deflecting attacks and striking with precision. Kale used his agility and tactical training to keep the guildmaster off balance. Together, they were unstoppable, a perfect combination of experience, strength, and trust. Finally, Eris disarmed the guildmaster, her rifle pointed directly at them. She had the chance to end the fight completely, but something had changed inside her. She was no longer just a hunter following orders. She was human, capable of mercy. "I won't kill you," Eris said. "The galaxy will decide your fate." The guildmaster stared at her, shocked, then slowly lowered their weapon. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. Kale took the data chip and connected it to the broadcast system. Across every system, every station, every colony, the truth poured out. The council's plan, the guild's corruption, the proof of stolen resources and manufactured conflicts. The galaxy learned of the danger that had been quietly brewing, and the people's outrage began immediately. With the evidence public, the guild's power collapsed. Their influence vanished as quickly as it had risen, leaving behind only whispers and legends of the deadliest hunters in history. Eris and Kyle watched from the rooftop as agents of the New Order began securing the area and rescuing prisoners. Kyle turned to her. "We did it. We actually did it." Eris allowed herself to smile. "Not just did it, we survived it together." The weight of 30 years, the endless missions, the loneliness and battles, all of it seemed to lift off her shoulders. She had failed a mission, yes, but it was the only failure that mattered. It had freed her from the life she had always thought defined her. Kyle reached out and took her hand. "I never wanted to be the one you'd hunt. I wanted to be the one you'd come home to." Eris squeezed his hand. "Then let's make sure we have a home to come to." Months later, the Shadow Fang sat in a quiet orbit above a small frontier world. Eris and Kale had rebuilt their lives slowly, helping colonies recover, training new leaders and protecting the innocent when needed. Eris's reputation as the deadliest huntress faded into legend, but she no longer cared. She had learned something that missions and contracts could never teach. Courage was not just about skill or victory. It was about choosing what was right, even when it meant breaking every rule she had lived by. And sometimes the strongest victories were the ones that saved not just the world, but the heart. Eris and Kale stood together on the observation deck of their small home, looking at the twin suns rising over the horizon. For the first time in decades, the galaxy felt like a place of hope rather than fear. Eris smiled softly. 30 years undefeated, and now I've failed my first mission. Kyle laughed, and it was the best failure of all. As the suns climbed higher, casting warm light across the land, Eris realized the truth she had been avoiding for years. Sometimes, love and justice were the most important victories of all, and for the deadliest huntress in the galaxy, that was more than enough.